Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. In a dense forest, a red-haired boy, no older than 5, diligently practiced his swordsmanship with a short blade. It was midday, the sun beating down mercilessly. Sweat plastered the boy's clothes to his skin. Man, this heat is brutal, Shin Uzumaki grumbled, but his training continued unabated. A little sunshine wouldn't derail his pursuit of strength. Shin, there you are. What are you doing out here in this inferno? Trying to fry your brains. A small head popped out from behind a large tree. Kushina Uzumaki skipped towards Shin, her red hair a fiery halo in the sunlight. Shin paused his practice and turned, a wry smile on his face as he looked at the adorable girl. Kushina, now's not really the time for a tea party. Kushina puffed out her cheeks, her pout on full display. Shin, you used to hang out with me all the time. Now you're giving me the cold shoulder. Tears welled up in Kushina's eyes, threatening to cascade down her cheeks. Shin felt a wave of exasperation. Kushina, do you think I'm out here baking in this heat for fun? It's not exactly a picnic. Shin sat down, taking a long pull from his water bottle to rehydrate. Unlike the carefree Kushina, Shin carried a secret burden. He was a transmigrant, reborn into the world of Naruto as a newborn baby. The initial shock of landing in this world, where danger lurked around every corner, had been profound. Fortunately, he wasn't just some random civilian but a member of the Uzumaki clan in the Land of Whirlpools. But even that was a double-edged sword. It was the period after the First Shinobi World War, before the Second had erupted. The Naruto storyline he knew was still decades in the future. This was the era when the Land of Whirlpools faced its imminent demise. Shin didn't know the exact date, but he knew the clock was ticking. His only path forward was to grind his strength, to maximize his chances of surviving the destruction of the Land of Whirlpools. He wasn't about to let his second chance at life go to waste. Shin, are you keeping secrets from me? Kushina asked, her eyes mirroring the concern she felt for him. Shin looked at Kushina, his gaze serious. Kushina, what if I told you that soon, the Land of Whirlpools, the Uzumaki clan, will face a disaster unlike any other? Would you believe me? No way, Shin. You're pulling my leg, right? Kushina giggled, taking his words as a joke. Shin shrugged. If even Kushina, who trusted him implicitly, wouldn't buy it, convincing the rest of the clan was a lost cause. The destruction of the Land of Whirlpools seemed inevitable. He wasn't exactly Mr. Worldwide. No one would take him seriously. Ding! A crisp, mechanical chime echoed in Shin's mind, jolting him. Replication system activated. Greetings, Master. I await your commands. Shin felt a surge of excitement. He had a golden finger. But why now? After 5 years in this world, the system finally decided to wake up. Shin, what's up? Kushina asked, attuned to his every shift in mood. Nothing, Kushina. Just remembered something I gotta do. I'll definitely hang out with you tomorrow. Gotta run for now. Discover more. Fan fiction community. Fan fiction books. Cartoons. Shin sprang onto a tree branch, vanishing in a blur of motion. Kushina's jaw dropped. That speed and agility were beyond most genin. Shin was hiding some serious skills. Kushina clenched her fists, a playful anger bubbling up. If you ditch me tomorrow, you'll be sorry. She shouted after him. Instead of heading home, Shin made his way to a secluded riverbank to delve into his system's interface. System, lay it on me. What can you do? Shin asked, a mix of anticipation and anxiety in his voice. If this system turned out to be a dud, it would be a major letdown. This system is designated the Replication System. It can copy anything, from jutsu to chakra, even Kekkei Genkai. Shin's eyes widened. Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan, Kekkei Otsutsuki's Rinne Sharingan, all within his grasp. The various overpowered dojutsu of the Mangekyo Sharingan, Kekkei Otsutsuki's immortality, all those S-rank jutsu and Kekkei Genkai, the possibilities were endless. Hold on, there have to be some strings attached, right? Shin asked, his excitement tempered by a dose of realism. It couldn't be that easy. Affirmative. Replication requires the expenditure of replication cards. These are categorized into common, advanced, and divine levels. Common replication cards can replicate jutsu up to B rank, including B rank jutsu, chakra and physical abilities of Jonin, and so on. Advanced replication cards can replicate jutsu and secret techniques up to S rank, including S rank, chakra and physical abilities of Cage, and common Kekkei Genkai, such as Scorch Release and Lava Release. Divine replication cards are unrestricted and can replicate any target. Alright, so how do I get my hands on these replication cards? Shin asked, barely able to contain his impatience. There are two primary acquisition methods. First, the system will bestow upon you one replication card annually. The specific category, common, advanced, or divine, is determined by a random variable. The second method involves the completion of missions tailored to your preferences. Upon successful completion, you will be rewarded with replication cards. Missions are optional, and there are no penalties for failure. 1 card per year, not bad at all, Shin mused. His system seemed to be quite the benevolent benefactor. And the missions were optional, with no repercussions for failure. That was a relief. Shin valued his freedom. The last thing he needed was some overbearing system bossing him around. Oh, and system, don't suppose there's a welcome package for new users? Shin asked, a hopeful glint in his eyes. The newbie gift pack was granted to you at the moment of your birth, Master. You should be cognizant of its presence. Shin paused, then ventured a guess. Could it be the Sage Body? The Sage Body was a Kekkei Genkai common to the Uzumaki clan. Every member of the Senju and Uzumaki clans possessed it, but Shin had always felt his was different, more potent. Affirmative. Upon your transmigration into this world, Master, the system bestowed upon you the perfect Sage Body. Shin couldn't contain his elation. A perfect Sage Body, putting him on par with the legendary Hashirama Senju. Phew. With the system in play, at least I've got a fighting chance in this crazy world. Computer science. Shin noticed he had 5 replication cards stocked up. He'd been in the Naruto world for 5 years now, and even though the system had been snoozing this whole time, it hadn't skimped on the annual card handouts. Is my luck really this rotten? Shin checked the cards and found they were all common. The yearly card was a random drop. With a bit of luck, he could have scored a divine card. Sadly, fortune didn't seem to be on his side, not even an advanced card in sight. Let's see what's on the mission board. Shin opened the system's mission interface and found a single quest waiting for him. Survival. Survive the destruction of the Land of Whirlpools. Reward. 1 common replication card. Failure. No penalty. System, are you kidding me? No penalty for failure. If I fail, I'm dead. Shin couldn't help but complain. Could this survival mission even be failed? Failing meant kicking the bucket, didn't it? And the reward is pretty stingy, too. Master, rewards are commensurate with mission difficulty. This particular mission is not classified as high difficulty. Shin couldn't argue with that. For someone who was prepared, this mission wasn't exactly climbing Mount Everest. In the original story, when the Land of Whirlpools went kaput, a good number of Uzumaki clan members survived, like Karen's mother, for example. Time to head back. Shin channeled chakra to his legs, leapt onto a tree branch, and vanished in a few swift movements. He lived in a secluded spot, far from the clan's main grounds. It had its perks, mainly peace and quiet. You're finally back, Shin. Kushina was sitting on the steps in front of the house, chin resting on her hands. Her eyes, which had been downcast, lit up when she saw him. Kushina, you haven't been sitting here this whole time, have you? Shin walked over and pulled her up. It was just the two of them living here. A year ago, he had still been living with the clan, but things had happened, and he'd moved out. Ancestry and genealogy. Kushina had no family left in the clan. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 3. Shin was her only friend, so she came with him. I've been waiting for you forever. If you hadn't come back soon, I would have starved to death. Kushina said weakly. She couldn't cook, so she relied on Shin for meals. Weren't there some snacks left? You could have munched on those. Kushina gave an awkward laugh, her small hands fidgeting with her clothes. I might have finished those already. Alright, I'll whip something up right away. As Shin was about to lead Kushina inside, he heard a faint sound behind him. He turned and saw a middle-aged man with red hair, dressed in shinobi garb, standing a short distance away. The man was expressionless. He held a small bundle, which he tossed to Shin. This is your living allowance. Shin caught the bundle and opened it. Besides money, there were 2 jutsu scrolls. Those jutsu scrolls are your mother's belongings. The elder instructed me to deliver them to you. With that, the man vanished in a swirl of leaves. Mother's belongings. Shin felt a pang of sadness. He unfurled the 2 jutsu scrolls. They contained 2 sealing jutsu, the adamantine sealing chains and the 4-symbol seal. Both were incredibly powerful sealing jutsu, especially effective against tailed beasts. Shin, are you okay? Kushina asked cautiously. Don't worry, I'm fine. I'll make dinner first, and after we eat, we can practice these sealing jutsu together. Shin gave Kushina a reassuring smile. Huh, that's not right. These are your mother's legacy. I can't practice them with you. Kushina shook her head. Kushina, you're my best friend. You were there for me when everyone else shunned me. Of course I want to share good things with you. Shin placed a hand on Kushina's shoulder, his voice sincere. Shin was the grandson of the Uzumaki clan elder. His mother was the elder's daughter, but his father wasn't an Uzumaki. Anime and manga. Not only was he not an Uzumaki, but he was from the Uchiha clan, once sworn enemies of the Uzumaki. During the Warring States period, the Uzumaki and Senju clans were allies, while the Uchiha and Senju were locked in a bitter feud. Because of their alliance with the Senju, the Uzumaki had clashed with the Uchiha numerous times. Even though the Warring States period was long gone, the animosity lingered. Naturally, Shin's parents' relationship didn't end well. The man returned to the Uchiha clan, and Shin's mother, heartbroken, eventually succumbed to her grief. Shin had heard that the man also died on a mission shortly after his mother's passing. This was the reason Shin wasn't well liked within the Uzumaki clan. Even his grandfather, the clan elder, treated him coldly. Soon, Shin had dinner ready. He was a decent cook, at least good enough for Kushina, who ate with gusto. After dinner, Shin called Kushina over, and they began studying the adamantine sealing chains and the 4-symbol seal. The adamantine sealing chains was an A-rank sealing jutsu. When used, it produced multiple chakra chains from the user's back. These chains were not only powerful offensive weapons but could also be used to create barriers and seal tailed beasts. The stronger the user's chakra, the greater the jutsu's power. And what were the Uzumaki known for? Their massive chakra reserves, of course. The Uzumaki possessed the sage body. Even Kushina, who had only recently learned to mold chakra, had reserves comparable to an average genin. With their powerful chakra and this sealing jutsu, even the Nine Tails would be wary of facing an Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan's strength lay in their chakra and sealing jutsu. The seal used to contain the Nine Tails in Konoha was, in fact, an Uzumaki sealing jutsu. I don't get it at all. Am I just dumb? Kushina said, staring at the scrolls with a furrowed brow. Shin was engrossed in studying the jutsu. After coming to this world, he realized his learning ability had skyrocketed. He was starting to grasp the concepts behind these sealing jutsu, but mastering them would take time. After all, these were A-rank sealing jutsu. Many elite jonin couldn't learn them, it required a certain level of talent. They studied late into the night. When Shin finally set the scrolls aside, he noticed Kushina had fallen asleep beside him. Silly girl, falling asleep like that. Sensing the energy coursing through him, Shin figured his chakra reserves were probably on par with a jonin. And this was just the beginning. If he kept refining his chakra for a few years, could he reach tailed beast levels? He thought of Hashirama, the man who wielded chakra like it was an infinite resource, even the Nine Tails paling in comparison. Shin got up, washed up, and prepared breakfast. Kushina, breakfast is ready. Snooze, you lose. A while later, Kushina emerged from her room, yawning, her usually silky red hair a tangled mess. Go wash up, sleepyhead. Breakfast is getting cold. And look at your hair, birds could build a nest in there. Shin reached out and gently combed his fingers through Kushina's hair. Her face flushed slightly, but she was used to Shin's casual touch. After washing up, Kushina took her seat at the table. Shin had prepared a feast. Fish, meat, and 2 large glasses of milk. Being a shinobi was energy intensive, they couldn't skimp on nutrition. Proper fuel was essential for training. Both Shin and Kushina had healthy appetites, so Shin had prepared enough food for 5 people. Anime and manga. Thankfully, the Uzumaki clan provided a generous allowance, and Shin supplemented their income by hunting in the forest. Otherwise, they'd be struggling to keep their bellies full. Kushina, after breakfast, it's training time. You're coming with me, Shin said as he ate. As a transmigrant, he knew the dangers of the Naruto world. He wanted Kushina to become stronger, to be able to protect herself. Kushina nodded. Staying home alone was boring, she'd rather train with Shin. After breakfast, Kushina took the initiative to wash the dishes. While she was busy, Shin opened his system interface and accepted the only mission on the quest board. He hadn't accepted it yesterday, but there was no point delaying. It was a mission he had to complete no matter what. Once Kushina finished with the dishes, they headed out to the nearby forest. Kushina, you work on refining your chakra, Shin instructed. Okay. Kushina sat on a clean rock and started the monotonous process of chakra refinement. Shin took out his weighted clothing and put it on. Then, he drew the short blade from his hip and began practicing his swordsmanship. Before he got the chakra refinement technique, Shin had focused on kenjutsu and taijutsu. With his perfect sage body, his physical strength was exceptional, making taijutsu training twice as effective. The Uzumaki and Senju were natural-born brawlers. Horror films. It was just that the Uzumaki clan prioritized sealing jutsu, neglecting their powerful physiques. After 1,000 swings, Shin wiped the sweat from his brow and took out his kunai and shuriken. 50 meters away, he had set up a target. It was crude, but it served its purpose. Shin focused, his blue eyes morphing into a blood red, a single black tomo swirling into existence. The target, which had been a small speck at 50 meters, was now crystal clear. The Sharingan, a 1 tomo Sharingan. Shin had Uchiha blood flowing through his veins, awakening the Sharingan wasn't surprising. He had awakened it when his mother died, but he had kept it a secret, even from Kushina. The fewer people knew, the better. If others found out he had the Sharingan, his life within the Uzumaki clan would become even more difficult. Fixing his gaze on the distant target, Shin launched a kunai. With the Sharingan's enhanced vision, he could clearly see the bullseye. The kunai struck dead center, its force so strong that it pierced through the target, leaving a gaping hole. After practicing kunai throwing for a while, Shin decided to move on. Compared to kunai throwing, mastering jutsu was far more critical. Next up, time to crack this sealing jutsu. Shin pulled out the jutsu scroll and started studying the adamantine sealing chains. He wasn't in a hurry to learn the 4-symbol seal, that could wait. Mastering the adamantine sealing chains would significantly boost his combat power, giving him a way to utilize his massive chakra. After all, what good was a mountain of chakra if you didn't have the jutsu to use it effectively? Shin had figured out some basic chakra control techniques, like channeling it to his legs for explosive jumps, propelling him several meters into the air. That's how he had been leaping onto trees, but his self-taught techniques were rough around the edges. Not only did they guzzle chakra, but they also put a strain on his legs. He was lucky to have a perfect sage body, a normal person attempting those jumps might end up crippled. What I need are the fundamentals. Shin tried to use the adamantine sealing chains, but nothing happened. He realized he didn't have the fine motor control needed to manipulate his chakra effectively. Despite his vast reserves, he couldn't achieve the precise control needed to channel chakra for complex jutsu. How could he learn the adamantine sealing chains, with such poor chakra control? He needed to master the basics first. It couldn't be helped. Controlling his massive chakra reserves was no walk in the park, especially without a teacher. He'd had to figure it all out himself, the hard way. He'd mastered tree climbing through sheer stubbornness and a high tolerance for pain. You're so mean, still holding a grudge. Kushina stuck her tongue out at him. By the way, you don't like it when I call you Shin-chan, right? If I learn how to climb trees without using my hands, I'll stop calling you that, deal? It made him sound like a little kid. But Kushina was used to it. Breaking the habit would be tough. Kushina called him Shin-chan because he was younger than her. Well, only by 3 days, but still younger. She used to make him call her Big Sis, but as a transmigrant, there was no way he was calling someone his own age Big Sis. Fine. Shin nodded and shared all the tricks he'd discovered. With Shin's guidance and insider knowledge, Kushina mastered tree climbing in just half an hour. The girl was a natural. Shin, I learned way faster than you. Kushina said, a smug grin on her face. Anime and manga. It had taken Shin over 3 hours, while Kushina had done it in 30 minutes. But that didn't mean he was less talented. He'd had to figure it out through trial and error, while Kushina had a shortcut, thanks to him. After the tree climbing lesson, Shin led Kushina to a nearby river for water walking practice. Water walking was definitely trickier. Water offered no resistance. One wrong step, and you were taking a dip. Thankfully, Shin's tree climbing experience gave him a head start. He only fell in twice before he was walking, even running, on water. Kushina, on the other hand, wasn't having as much luck. She'd already fallen in a dozen times, much to Shin's amusement. After splashing around for hours, Kushina finally got the hang of water walking. Kushina, you're officially a prodigy. Mastering both tree climbing and water walking at the age of 5, with such precise chakra control. That was prodigy level stuff. Let's go change first, Kushina said, her clothes dripping. They went back, changed, and finally had lunch. It was already 3 in the afternoon. Kushina had stubbornly refused to eat until she mastered water walking, hence the late lunch. Anime and manga. After their meal, Shin decided to skip training and headed towards the clan grounds with Kushina. Shin-chan, why are we going to the clan grounds? Kushina asked, surprised. Didn't we have a deal? Shin lightly flicked Kushina's forehead. It's a habit. I'll get better, I promise. Kushina rubbed her forehead, pouting at Shin. Shin chuckled. Breaking that habit was probably going to be an uphill battle. By the way, Shin, why are we going to the clan grounds? You don't usually like going there. They lived outside the clan grounds and rarely ventured in, except when they needed supplies. This wasn't a supply run. Shin wanted to put his replication card to use. As they entered the Uzumaki clan grounds, the atmosphere became livelier. The Uzumaki clan wasn't small, they had over 200 members. It was a far cry from their glory days during the Warring States period, but they were still a force to be reckoned with in any hidden village. Hey, system, when I use a replication card, can I see the target's abilities? How am I supposed to copy something if I don't know what they can do? That is for you to determine, Master. This system does not possess such functionality. Fortunately, he had some knowledge of the Uzumaki clan ninjas. He pulled Kushina towards the clan's training grounds. The training grounds were vast. Almost everyone in the clan trained there. Shin ignored the genin and chunin, his eyes scanning for jonin. The Uzumaki clan had its fair share of jonin. A large clan like theirs couldn't survive without them. But finding a jonin in this crowded training ground was like finding a needle in a haystack. Even if they came here to train, they'd likely find a secluded spot. Common replication cards could copy the chakra and physical abilities of a jonin at most, so Shin needed to find one to maximize his gains. Bingo! Shin spotted someone he knew, an Uzumaki jonin who specialized in taijutsu. System: use a common replication card to copy Uzumaki Hikaru's physique. Physique encompassed strength, speed, stamina, agility, and flexibility. He could copy each attribute individually, but that would be a waste of a precious replication card. In an instant, Shin felt his body swell. His bones hardened, his muscles tightened, all thanks to an unseen force. He felt lighter, more agile. This power is insane. Shin threw a punch, the force generating a sharp gust of wind. He was at least 7 or 8 times stronger than before. With his perfect sage body, Shin was already freakishly strong. Now, with this boost, he felt like he could punch a tree in half. System: does the copied strength stack with my original strength? Shin asked a crucial question. Engineering and technology. Affirmative. Copied attributes are additive to your existing capabilities. Shin's eyes lit up. If he could keep stacking attributes, why bother learning jutsu? Shin, what are you daydreaming about? Kushina nudged Shin, snapping him out of his trance. Reading manga series. His conversation with the system had been a mental one, so to Kushina, he just seemed spaced out. Nothing much, Shin replied with a grin he couldn't quite suppress. Liar. You wouldn't be grinning like that if it was nothing. Something good must have happened. Fine, keep your secrets, Kushina huffed, pouting. Shin shook his head, his smile fading. He realized his earlier plan had been a bit too ambitious. Just as the system had said, his progress was limited by replication cards. Even with dozens of common cards, he wouldn't be able to stack his physique to Might Guy's 8 inner gates level. Besides, he'd never wanted to be a one-trick pony, specializing only in taijutsu. Being well-rounded was the key to minimizing weaknesses. Specializing in one area made you an easy target. Uzumaki Shin, is that you? Uzumaki Hikaru, the jonin whose physique Shin had just copied, looked over. A Jonin's senses were sharp. Hikaru had noticed Shin staring at him. He had no idea that the physique he'd spent over a decade honing, enduring countless hardships to achieve, had been duplicated in an instant. Shin's system was truly broken. It allowed him to gain the fruits of someone else's labor without putting in the work. If Hikaru knew, he'd probably want to strangle Shin. But even without knowing, Hikaru wasn't exactly thrilled to see Shin. They had a history. Or rather, Shin had a history with Hikaru's son. Back when Shin was still living in the clan grounds, he'd had a run-in with the boy. Shin had broken the kid's leg, putting him out of commission for 3 months. Hikaru had been furious, ready to tear Shin apart. But even though Shin wasn't popular, he was still the clan elder's grandson. Hikaru couldn't touch him. Tracing family history. Yo, Hikaru. Fancy meeting you here. How's your son doing? Shin asked with a casual smile. He wasn't afraid of the Jonin. Not because of his own strength, though. Honestly, even with Hikaru's physique stacked on top of his own, he was no match for the experienced Jonin in a fight. Shin lacked combat experience. Hikaru, on the other hand, was a seasoned warrior. Even with superior physical abilities, Shin would lose. He thought of Kekkei Otsutsuki, who, despite her immense power, was ultimately sealed due to her lack of battle experience. If Madara Uchiha had obtained Kekkei's power, he would have been truly unstoppable. Shin's confidence stemmed from his identity. No matter how disliked he was still the clan elder's grandson. Would Hikaru dare lay a finger on him? HMPH. Hikaru snorted, reminding himself that Shin was just a child, not worth his time. But even so, he couldn't completely let it go. He glared at Shin before turning and walking away. He couldn't do anything to Shin, so out of sight, out of mind. Shin continued exploring the training grounds. He used another common replication card, this time copying a jutsu, the B-rank Shadow Clone Jutsu. The Shadow Clone Jutsu was created by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. But its practicality led to it being stolen by ninjas from other nations. Countless shinobi in the ninja world knew the Shadow Clone Jutsu, including those in the Uzumaki Clan. Shin copied it from an elite Chunin. With his perfect sage body, and the Shadow Clone Jutsu, his training efficiency would skyrocket. Of course, he would have preferred the forbidden multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Despite being A rank, it was classified as forbidden. Forbidden didn't necessarily mean powerful. Jutsu that caused harm to the user or were deemed too dangerous were classified as forbidden. This included jutsu like the Edo Tensei. Unfortunately, common replication cards couldn't copy A-rank jutsu, only B-rank at most. And even if he could copy it, he wouldn't find anyone to copy from. While many knew the Shadow Clone Jutsu, those who knew the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu were few and far between. With 3 replication cards remaining, Shin decided to call it a day. He left the training grounds with Kushina and bought some ninja tools and 2 chakra papers. Chakra papers were used to determine a shinobi's chakra nature. There were 7 chakra natures in total: wind, lightning, water, fire, earth, yin, and yang. The yin and yang natures couldn't be tested with chakra paper. Why did you buy these? They're so expensive, 1,000 ryo each. Kushina looked at the papers with distress. These are chakra papers. They tell you what kind of chakra you have. Here, try it. Kushina curiously took a chakra paper and channeled her chakra into it. The paper reacted immediately. It split down the middle, and the corners became damp. Kushina, your chakra natures are wind and water, Shin explained. Kushina looked confused. She didn't understand these concepts yet. Reading manga series, Shin took a chakra paper and infused it with his chakra. The paper split, indicating wind nature. One corner ignited, revealing fire nature. Then, a corner became damp water, another wrinkled lightning, and the last one crumbled earth. Shin possessed 5 chakra natures: wind, lightning, water, fire, and earth. Yin and yang couldn't be detected with the paper, but with his perfect sage body, he definitely had yang. And he also had the Sharingan, a manifestation of yin release, suggesting he likely possessed yin nature as well. This meant he might have all 7 chakra natures. That was definitely something to be excited about. Whoa, 5 transformations. You have 5 chakra natures. Shin smiled faintly, choosing not to mention yin and yang for now. It was getting late. They returned home before dark. Shin put away the ninja tools he'd bought and started preparing dinner. Kushina, what do you want to eat? Hee, anything you make is delicious. Shin was more than satisfied with the Rasengan's destructive power. A-rank jutsu were no joke. He had developed the Rasengan himself. Understanding the principles behind it, recreating it wasn't that difficult. This was the culmination of his half-month's training. Not only had he mastered the adamantine sealing chains, but he'd also developed the Rasengan. That tree must have been decades old, and you just punched a hole through it, Kushina said, staring at the poor tree. Hey, Kushina, do you still want to learn the Rasengan or what? Of course I do. Teach me, teach me. Kushina jumped up, grabbing Shin's arm excitedly. Ouch, my shoulders are kinda sore. Shin sat down, looking expectantly at Kushina. Kushina knew what he wanted. With a reluctant sigh, she walked over and started massaging his shoulders. Not bad, but a little more pressure would be perfect, Shin said, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. Kushina gritted her teeth, but for the sake of learning the Rasengan, she endured. It's getting late, almost lunchtime. Let's head back. I'll teach you in the afternoon. Shin glanced at the sun high in the sky. Kushina, though eager to learn the Rasengan, knew that food came first. After lunch, Shin began teaching Kushina the jutsu. Half a day wasn't enough to master it, though. You can already burst a water balloon. That's the second stage completed. You'll have the Rasengan down in no time. As the sky darkened, Shin told Kushina to stop for the day and continue tomorrow. The Rasengan had 4 stages. The first was simple: gathering chakra in your palm. The second stage involved stable and continuous chakra release. This was practiced by placing a water balloon in your hand and releasing chakra to make the water inside move erratically until the balloon exploded. The third stage used a rubber ball. The goal was to maintain chakra release, solidifying the chakra until it could burst the ball. At the third stage, the Rasengan could already cause damage, but its power was limited. The final stage combined everything learned previously. High-density chakra was gathered in the hand, released continuously, maintained, and finally completing the jutsu. After dinner, Kushina went to bed. Shin returned to his room. I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling about this. Shin looked out the window. The sky was unusually dark, not a moon or star in sight. Can't sleep. Might as well refine some chakra. Time passed. It was past 1 in the morning when Shin finally stopped. He was feeling sleepy. Just as he was about to lie down, a loud noise jolted him awake. He rushed to the window. In the direction of the Uzumaki Clan grounds, flames lit up the night sky. Could it be? His drowsiness vanished. He ran to Kushina's room. Kushina, wake up. Shin, what's going on? I was sleeping so soundly. Why did you wake me up? Kushina grumbled, her eyes barely open. Wake up. Something's wrong. Shin flicked Kushina's forehead to bring her to her senses. This was no time for jokes. Anime and manga. If his hunch was right, the disaster had struck the Land of Whirlpools. There was nothing he could do to stop it, but he could protect himself and Kushina. What's wrong? Kushina asked, seeing the seriousness in Shin's eyes. Shin pointed towards the window. Kushina followed his gaze and saw the fire raging in the distance. Whoa, the clan grounds are on fire. It's more than just a fire. We're under attack. Listen to that. Those explosions are from explosive tags. Who would dare attack the Uzumaki clan? Now's not the time to discuss that. Come on. Shin urged Kushina to get dressed, pack their essentials, and prepare to leave. Even though they were far from the clan grounds, there was no guarantee of safety. Captain, this is the outer perimeter of the Uzumaki clan grounds, right? Why is there a house here? Just as they stepped out, Shin saw several figures in ninja attire, their faces hidden behind masks. His heart sank. Kushina gripped his arm, fear creeping into her eyes. Well, look what we have here. A couple of stragglers. And just kids, too. A ninja wearing a tanuki mask leered at them. Talk about bad luck. They were so far out, yet they still ran into enemies. The 5 ninjas were equally surprised. They had been tasked with sealing off the Uzumaki clan grounds, preventing anyone from escaping. They hadn't expected to find 2 children out here. Judging by their red hair, they were definitely Uzumaki. And if they were Uzumaki, they had to be eliminated. Enough chatter. Them. The leader of the squad ordered. The squad consisted of 1 Jonin and 4 elite Chunin. Seeing them move to attack, Shin swiftly pulled 3 shuriken from his pouch and flung them at the Jonin leader. While the Jonin was dodging, Shin made his move. He appeared before one of the Chunin in a flash, leaping up and delivering a powerful blow to the ninja's neck. His speed was such that the Chunin didn't even have time to react. The blow snapped his neck. Blood gurgled from the Chunin's mouth. Within a second, he was dead. The entire encounter took less than 2 seconds. After taking down the Chunin, Shin retreated to Kushina's side. Run. Shin. Carrying me is slowing you down. Put me down. Kushina, nestled in Shin's arms, spoke up. Anime and manga. You weigh about as much as a rabbit. How am I slow? Shin shot her a look. You jerk, comparing me to a rabbit. Kushina lightly nipped his arm, then quieted down. Hey, Shin, if they catch up, just ditch me and run. I'll buy you some time. Just promise you'll avenge me, okay? Kushina's voice was barely a whisper. Don't be ridiculous. You think those clowns can catch us? Shin gave her another exasperated look. We practically live in this forest. We know it way better than they do. Besides, do you have any idea how fast I am? Don't worry. Shin had copied the physique of the taijutsu master, Uzumaki Hikaru. Combined with his already impressive physical abilities, he was more than a match for any taijutsu specialist. He was outpacing his pursuers with ease. If only he knew the body flicker jutsu, he could have vanished from their sight completely. Even now, he was leaving them in the dust. Master, you have triggered a new mission. Eliminate the pursuing squad. Reward. 1 advanced replication card. Accept. An advanced replication card, huh? Shin weighed his options. System. What are their strengths? He had taken out one of them with a single punch, but he didn't know their actual skill levels. The leader is a Jonin. The remaining 3 are elite Chunin. Shin hadn't expected the system to answer, but it did. Knowing their strengths, Shin accepted the mission without hesitation. If they had an elite Jonin, he might have reconsidered. But a regular Jonin, he could handle that. Shin stopped running. Why are we stopping? Are you tired? I told you to put me down. Kushina looked at him, panic rising in her voice. Anime and manga. Kushina, we don't need to run anymore. I'm going to take them out. Are you crazy, Shin? They're real ninjas. We don't stand a chance. Kushina knew Shin was strong, but against actual ninjas, she didn't have much faith. Kushina, remember when I took out that guy back there? Kushina was speechless. He had indeed won, but that was a surprise attack. Kushina, you hide. Watch and learn. I'll show you what I'm truly capable of. Shin punched a nearby tree. With a loud crack, the tree snapped in two. Kushina shook her head. I'm staying with you. Kushina, listen. I need you to hide and wait for an opportunity to ambush them. If I start losing, your surprise attack will give us a chance to escape. Persuaded by Shin's reasoning, Kushina agreed. She found a hiding spot, clutching her kunai and shuriken, ready to strike. Shin glanced back. Ninjas were excellent trackers. They would find him soon, following the trail he'd left. An idea sparked in his mind. He leaned against a large tree, panting dramatically, feigning exhaustion. If he could lure them into a trap, he would. Less than a minute later, the ninjas arrived. With one down, there were 4 left. Finally found the brat. Didn't expect him to be so fast, one of the Chunin remarked. They were exhausted from the chase. Captain, where's the girl? The Jonin leader scanned the area. Kushina had concealed herself well. In the darkness, the Jonin couldn't find her. She must have run off. Let's deal with this kid first. The Jonin drew his sword, approaching Shin slowly. Shin hated one of his men right in front of him. He would avenge this humiliation personally. Shin watched the Jonin approach, a glint in his eyes. He'd hoped to ambush a Chunin, but having the Jonin come to him was even better. Little brat, out of steam, are you? Time to die. The Jonin grinned cruelly, his expression hidden behind his mask. As the Jonin lunged with his sword, Shin activated his Sharingan and sprang into action. He nimbly dodged the sword thrust and delivered a swift kick to the Jonin's groin. With Shin's speed in the close proximity, even an elite Jonin wouldn't have been able to dodge. The Jonin had been careless. Even though Shin hated one of his men, he was still just a child. The Jonin had underestimated him. The result was inevitable. With a sickening crack, the Jonin crumpled to the ground, a scream tearing from his throat. A shattered groin would bring even a cage-level ninja to their knees. The Jonin was effectively out of the fight. Shinobi had a high pain tolerance, but this kind of pain was unbearable for any man. Martial arts films. You've gotta be the most pathetic Jonin to ever die, Shin remarked. He formed a Rasengan between his hands. He couldn't create it with one hand yet, so he had to use both. He pressed the Rasengan into the incapacitated Jonin's chest, the swirling sphere of chakra tearing through his heart. Took out a Jonin just like that. He was weaker than I thought. Shin blinked. It wasn't that the Jonin was weak. Jonin were the backbone of any hidden village. In smaller villages, they were the peak of fighting power. But this Jonin hadn't even had a chance to use his full strength. He'd been taken out before he could even react. This served as a reminder to Shin. In this dangerous world, he could never let his guard down. Otherwise, he might end up like this Jonin. He thought of Madara Uchiha, betrayed and used as a sacrifice for Kagaya Otsutsuki's revival. Your boss is dead. Care to join him? Shin's eyes hardened as he glared at the remaining 3 Chunin. Shin eyed the 3 remaining Chunin, picking up the fallen Jonin's sword. Swords. So, you want to avenge your captain? Come get some. The 3 Chunin exchanged glances. None of them dared to make a move. This kid was creepy. He'd already ED one of them and taken down their captain. They weren't about to underestimate him now. Fine, I'll come to you then. Shin vanished into the darkness. In the thick forest, his speed and controlled ferocity, much like Toji Fushiguro, rendered him untraceable. Watch out. But it was too late. Shin's sword pierced the Chunin's heart before he could finish his warning. Shin withdrew his sword and dashed towards the next Chunin. Water style. Water prison jutsu. Sensing the danger, the Chunin swiftly formed hand seals, encasing himself in a sphere of water for protection. The water prison jutsu was a C-rank jutsu that could trap enemies or be used defensively. You think that can stop me? How naive. Shin channeled chakra into the sword, enhancing its piercing power. The water prison shattered like a fragile bubble as the sword plunged through, impaling the Chunan's heart. Another one down. Just one left. Shin looked at the last Chunin. These elite Chunin was starting to feel like swatting flies. Kakashi graduated and became a genin at 5, and everyone called him a genius. I'm 5, and I'm wiping the floor with elite Chunin. What does that make me? A prodigy. A monster. Shin muttered to himself. Monster. You're a monster. The last Chunin pointed at Shin, his eyes wide with terror. He turned and fled. You're the monster. And you're not getting away. Shin stomped on the ground, creating a small crater. He shot forward like an arrow, chasing after the fleeing Chunin. This guy was crucial to his mission, Shin couldn't let him escape. And for his and Kushina's safety, he couldn't leave any witnesses. Anime and manga. Die. Shin quickly caught up, swinging the sword. It wasn't ideal for slashing, but with Shin's strength, it would cleave the Chunin in two. The sword connected, and just as Shin relaxed, the figure he'd struck transformed into a log. A substitution jutsu. Substitution. Shin hadn't expected the Chunin to use a substitution jutsu at the last moment. Adamantine sealing chains. Chakra chains erupted from Shin's back, snaking through the forest and ensnaring the fleeing Chunin. Constrict. The chains tightened, tearing the Chunin apart. Shin's face paled as he looked at the gruesome sight. He quickly turned away. He was used to blood, having hunted animals in the forest. He hadn't felt anything when he'd the first Chunin. The next few deaths had caused a slight ripple in his emotions, but this last one, this was too much. The chakra chains dissipated. Shin leaned against a tree, gagging. Hinduism. He swore he'd never use the chains like that again. It was too brutal, even for him. Congratulations, Master. Mission complete. You have been awarded one advanced replication card. Phew. Finally got the reward. Shin composed himself and called out to Kushina. Come out, Kushina. It's over. Kushina emerged, looking bewildered. It was over. It was too dark, and she didn't have the Sharingan. She hadn't seen anything. She walked over and saw the Jonin's body. Shin, how did you do it? Doesn't matter. Let's see what loot we got. Shin started rummaging through the Jonin's pouch while Kushina stood back, a little scared. Even though the ninjas were dead, she was still frightened. It was a good thing she hadn't seen the Chunin Shin had torn apart with the chains, she might have fainted. Shin found several explosive tags, a valuable commodity. There were also kunai, shuriken, and 2 jutsu scrolls. B-rank water style. Water dragon jutsu and water style, hiding in mist jutsu. Shin frowned. These jutsu gave him a clue about the attackers' identities. They were likely from Kurigakure. Looks like Kurigakure is behind this attack on Uzushiogakure. Only the 5 great nations had the strength to attack the Uzumaki clan. Konoha was an ally. They wouldn't be involved. Tsunade and Iwagakure were too far away. Attacking Uzushiogakure would be logistically impractical. That left Kumogakure and Kurigakure, both of which could launch attacks from the sea. Kurigakure's involvement was confirmed. He wasn't sure about Kumogakure, though. If there was one village with the most ambition, it was Kumogakure. Their involvement was highly probable. After all, the Uzumaki's sealing jutsu were something Kumogakure would covet. No, not just Kumogakure, every village would want them. Possessing powerful sealing jutsu that others feared and desired, yet lacking the strength to defend themselves, was the reason for Uzushiogakure's downfall. Having something valuable without the power to protect it was a recipe for disaster, no matter the world. I wonder if Konoha had a hand in this. Shin was suspicious of their supposed ally. After all, Konoha had Danzo. To think Danzo wouldn't be interested in the Uzumaki's sealing jutsu was laughable. Shin shook his head, pushing those thoughts aside. He collected the pouches of the other two Chunin and left with Kushina. He left the last Chunin's pouch where it was. The sight was too gruesome. He'd lose his appetite if he looked at it. He led Kushina to a small stream in the forest, the same one where they had practiced. Shin, I'm worried. Kushina's voice was filled with anxiety. She was smart. If they had encountered enemies so far from the clan grounds, she could only imagine the horrors that must have befallen Uzumaki. Anime and manga. Worrying won't change anything. Shin shook his head. Despite not being well liked, he had received his due within the clan. He didn't want to see the Uzumaki clan destroyed. But he was powerless to stop it. He had known about the impending disaster, but who would have believed him? Besides, he didn't know when it would happen. Even if people believed him, they wouldn't have been able to prepare. The enemies had targeted the Uzumaki clan. Their attack was swift and brutal. In the original story, Uzumaki fell before Konoha could even send reinforcements. As for him saving the clan, don't make him laugh. He wasn't going to get just because he'd taken out a Jonin. Going there would be suicide. They sat by the river, Kushina leaning against Shin. Shin was a transmigrant. His body was that of a 5-year-old, but his mind was not. Kushina, however, was just a 5-year-old girl. Even though children in the ninja world matured quickly, the events of the night had shaken her to her core. Only in Shin's arms did she feel a sense of security. Shin, promise me you'll never leave me. Kushina looked up at him, her eyes pleading. She was terrified. When Shin had faced those ninjas, she had been so afraid he would bleed. She was relieved he was okay. If he hadn't been, she didn't know if she would have had the courage to go on. The thought of being alone was unbearable. I promise, Kushina, I'll never leave you. Shin met her gaze, his voice firm and reassuring. Kushina hugged him tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. Exhaustion finally caught up with her, and she drifted off to sleep. Shin smiled as he watched her sleep. He pulled out his pouch and examined its contents. He had already checked the Jonin's pouch. Besides ninja tools and 2 jutsu scrolls, there were some soldier pills and rations. Martial arts. He opened the pouches of the 2 Chunin. Kunai, shuriken, even senbon. More soldier pills, rations, and a few explosive tags. Explosive tags were valuable, but expensive. Their blast radius was small, but their destructive power was significant. He also found a jutsu scroll containing the chakra refinement technique in the basic Academy 3. The Academy 3 consisted of the substitution jutsu, transformation jutsu, and clone jutsu. They were the most basic E-rank jutsu. But basic didn't mean useless. The transformation and clone jutsu were easy to see through. Clones created with the clone jutsu couldn't attack, they were no match for shadow clones. The substitution jutsu, however, had its uses. It allowed for a quick swap with another object, useful for dodging attacks. The Chunin had used it to escape Shin's attack. Of course, as the most basic jutsu, it wasn't invincible. Its effectiveness depended on the user. So, it was less effective against stronger opponents who could easily see through it. It was just an E-rank jutsu, it couldn't compare to something like Sasuke Uchiha's Amenetejikara. Shin studied the Academy 3. He was a genius. It didn't take him long to master these simple jutsu. Anime and manga. Hours passed. Dawn arrived, the sun peeking over the horizon. The warm sunlight seemed to dispel the darkness and gloom. Kushina woke up, rubbing her eyes. She looked around frantically, calming down only when she saw Shin. Morning. Have something to eat. Shin handed her some dried meat. It was part of the food they had hastily packed before fleeing their home. I'm not hungry, Kushina said, shaking her head. It wasn't that she wasn't hungry, she simply didn't have the appetite. You have to eat. We need our strength in case we run into danger. Persuaded by Shin, Kushina ate a few pieces of meat. I sent out shadow clones to scout. The invaders have left, Shin informed her. He had sent out 10 shadow clones to gather information. The invaders had left around 4 in the morning. And Shin knew they were safe now. Because the system had awarded him the common replication card for completing the survival mission. They left. What about the clan grounds? Kushina's face lit up, but then her expression turned to worry. Shin shook his head, remembering the images his shadow clones had sent back. It was a bloodbath. He didn't know if there were any survivors. His clones hadn't found any. Kushina's heart sank. She knew it wasn't good. But as long as Shin was okay, she didn't care about the rest. After resting for a while, Shin and Kushina left the forest and headed towards the clan grounds. They could smell the stench of blood from a distance. Anime and manga. Kushina, don't be scared, Shin said, holding her trembling hand. Kushina nodded bravely and continued walking. But when they finally reached the clan grounds and saw the carnage, Kushina threw up. Even though Shin had seen the images through his shadow clones, the sight still made his stomach churn. Over 200 Uzumaki, practically all dead. The blood, it was truly a river of blood. And it wasn't just the blood of the Uzumaki. There must have been casualties among the invaders as well, though their bodies were nowhere to be seen. They must have taken their dead with them. Kushina, are you okay? Kushina shook her head, the meager breakfast she'd eaten now gone. The scene was too horrific. Shin, our clan, the Uzumaki clan is gone, Shin said with a sigh. His desire for strength intensified. In this world, without power, this was the consequence. If the Uzumaki clan had someone like Hashirama Senju or Madara Uchiha, would they have met such a fate? Crack. A faint sound, but Shin's sharp ears picked it up. He looked towards the source. Who's there? Don't me. A young girl's terrified voice. Then a scream, followed by silence. Red hair. A survivor. Shin pulled Kushina towards the sound. Akiko didn't recognize Shin and Kushina. She guessed they were Uzumaki survivors, but it was better to be safe than sorry. It wasn't surprising that she didn't know them. Shin and Kushina lived far from the clan grounds. Even when they had lived within the clan, they hadn't interacted much. Shin had never even seen Akiko before. Same as you, Shin replied simply. Akiko fell silent, her eyes filled with sadness as she looked at the destruction around her. Tears streamed down her face as she thought of her parents. Should we comfort her? Kushina asked Shin. How? Let her cry. She'll have to rely on herself from now on. Being strong is better. Shin shook his head and sat on a nearby rock, contemplating their future. He had two choices. Leave with Kushina and live a life on the run, or wait for Konoha's reinforcements and go with them to Konoha. He glanced at Kushina and made up his mind. They would go to Konoha. Anime and manga, it was the safer option. With their distinctive red hair, wandering around would make them targets. And as two young children, where could they even go? It would be incredibly difficult. Going to Konoha offered safety and security. As long as they didn't draw too much attention to themselves, they would be fine. Especially with Uzumaki Mito still alive. Even the scheming Danzo wouldn't dare try anything. In Konoha, Shin could also learn the basics of being a shinobi, which were essential. Konoha was the best choice. But if they went there, he would have to change Kushina's fate as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. He didn't want that for her. The Nine Tails' power was immense, a great asset if used correctly, but it was also a ticking time bomb. And being the Nine Tails Jinchuriki meant a life under constant surveillance, with Anbu watching your every move. As for himself, Shin never wanted to become a Jinchuriki. He simply didn't need the Nine Tails. With his perfect sage body, once he grew stronger, he could take on the Nine Tails single-handedly. And with his Sharingan, he could probably subdue the beast with a glance. With the system at his disposal, why would he need the Nine Tails? But most importantly, he didn't want something else living inside him. It was an unsettling thought. Shin's gaze shifted to Akiko. It wasn't just him and Kushina anymore, there was another Uzumaki survivor to consider. Anime and manga. Kushina, come here. I need to talk to you. Kushina, though curious, walked over. Kushina, Konoha's reinforcements might arrive soon. They might take us to Konoha. If we go, remember, don't stand out too much. Shin advised. When choosing a Jinchuriki, they would look for someone with talent. Standing out too much might attract the attention of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and the shadowy Danzo. Hiruzen would be fine, but Danzo, that was a different story. Kushina didn't understand why Shin was saying this, but she nodded, committing his words to memory. Another day passed. The sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows over the blood-soaked ruins of Uzushiogakure. Thump, 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 asterisk, footsteps. Shin's senses went on high alert. His left hand went to his pouch, gripping an explosive tag. His right hand held a katana. He was a bit small to be wielding a katana, but he had found it among the debris. It had a few chips, but it was still usable. Kushina moved closer to Shin, and Akiko, frightened, huddled next to them. 3 kids. A woman with striking blonde hair and cold eyes approached them. Despite her beauty, her expression was intimidating. Several other ninja followed behind her. You're Uzumaki, right? Don't be afraid. I'm a Konoha shinobi. My name is Tsunade. Tsunade's harsh gaze softened. Seeing the state of Uzushiogakure had filled her with rage, hence her initial coldness. Hearing her name, Shin relaxed, but he couldn't help but stare. He couldn't believe this was Tsunade. She was so flat. He couldn't fathom how she would transform into the, well, busty woman she would become. Are you all that's left of the Uzumaki clan? Tsunade asked. I don't know. Maybe there are other survivors. Shin was certain there were others, but they had either escaped the Land of Whirlpools or were in hiding. Let's search the area. See if we can find anyone else. Damn it, if I find out who did this, all. Tsunade's intent flared. The Uzumaki were her grandmother's people. They had a long-standing alliance with the Senju clan. During the Warring States period, the Uzumaki had fought alongside the Senju against the Uchiha. Tsunade was furious, but it was useless now. She had rushed to the Land of Whirlpools as soon as she received the news, but it was too late. The enemy had annihilated the Uzumaki clan in a single night. They must have planned this for a long time. Shin couldn't help but roll his eyes at Tsunade's tough talk. Empty threats were so childish. Anime and manga. Unfortunately, Tsunade caught his expression. She glared at him. This little brat was looking down on her. Hey, brat, what was that look for? But she couldn't exactly punish him for that. She wasn't going to beat up a child, no matter how infuriating he was. Family law. Suddenly, Tsunade glared at Shin. The little punk was clearly looking down on her, yet he denied it. You've got guts, kid. Recovering from your clan's destruction so quickly. She placed a hand on Shin's head, ruffling his hair with more force than necessary. As she messed up his hair, she realized how soft it was. It was almost addictive. Looking at his cute little face, she couldn't resist pinching his cheek. So soft, so adorable. Kushina, seeing Tsunade manhandling Shin, yelled, "Hey, stop that." Having his face pinched by a woman. Humiliating. "Get your hands off me. I don't like being touched by men," Shin said, scowling. Men. Tsunade froze. Was he blind? Where did he get the idea that she was a man? "Kid, you need to get your eyes checked. I'm a woman, not a man," Tsunade said through gritted teeth. "Ha, I may be young, but I know the difference between a man and a woman. You don't exactly scream, 'woman,' to me." Shin's eyes drifted towards her chest, his expression a mix of disdain and disbelief. Tsunade's face flushed red. This brat was deliberately mocking her. "Princess Tsunade, we found 2 survivors." Tsunade, about to give Shin a piece of her mind, glared at him one last time before turning towards the newcomers. 2 males, one around Shin's age, the other in his 20s. Both Uzumaki survivors. Shin recognized the boy. "Uzumaki Kai, long time no see. How's your leg?" Shin gave Kai a sly smile, which earned him a glare filled with anger and a hint of fear. Kai was the son of Uzumaki Hikaru, the taijutsu master whose physique Shin had copied. Shin had broken the boy's leg during their previous encounter. Anime and manga. He hadn't expected Kai to survive the destruction of the clan. The kid was lucky to be alive. Tsunade's eyes flickered between Shin and Kai. There was definitely bad blood between these two. But she wasn't interested in getting involved in a squabble between kids. She turned to the older Uzumaki. "What's your name?" I'm Uzumaki Hikaru, a Jonin of the Uzumaki clan. "Do you know who attacked the clan?" Tsunade asked. "I don't know. I was scared, so I hid right away. I don't know what happened after that." Hikaru hung his head in shame, earning a scornful look from Tsunade. This guy was older than her, yet he was a coward. When his clan was in danger, he hid like a rat. Tsunade wasn't even as old as this Hikaru. Despite calling Shin a kid, she was only 16. But in the ninja world, 16 wasn't that young. During the Warring States period, people were already married with children at that age. Family law. Tsunade ordered her men to continue searching for survivors while investigating who was behind the attack. Judging by the water damage and the traces of lightning release, she had a pretty good idea. If her suspicions were correct, there wasn't much she could do. "Kid, what's your name?" Tsunade asked Shin. Shin was getting tired of being called kid. Too bad he couldn't beat Tsunade in a fight. He estimated her strength to be at elite Jonin level, definitely stronger than him. "I'm Uzumaki Shin. And don't call me kid. You'll regret it when I'm stronger than you." "Regret it? Hey, I'll be waiting for that day," Tsunade said with a smirk. Shin snorted. She might be looking down on him now, but she'd sing a different tune when he surpassed her. "Shin, I'm hungry." Kushina tugged at his sleeve. Shin took out some dry rations and jerky. It wasn't much, but it would fill their stomachs for now. 3 days later, the bodies of the Uzumaki clan members were buried, including Shin's grandfather, the clan elder. Seeing his grandfather's body, Shin felt a strange mix of emotions. He hadn't been close to the man, they had barely interacted. But he still felt a pang of sadness. After the burial, they set off for Konoha with Tsunade. Shin carried a katana strapped to his back. It was over 3 feet long, with a simple gold design on the hilt. He had found it in the Uzumaki clan shrine. It was incredibly sharp, able to slice through stone with ease. He hadn't tested it on steel yet, though. They sailed towards the Land of Fire. Shin stood at the stern, watching the Land of Whirlpools disappear over the horizon. Kushina stood beside him. They didn't know when they would return. Feeling sad to leave, Shin and Kushina turned to see Tsunade standing behind them. Anime and manga. Kushina puffed out her cheeks, glaring at Tsunade. Shin was also keeping his distance from Tsunade. The woman was relentless, constantly ruffling his hair and pinching his cheeks. He was annoyed, but he didn't want to reveal his strength, so he hadn't resisted much. He wondered if she had some weird fetish. Kushina's reason for disliking Tsunade was simple. She hadn't even ruffled Shin's hair or pinched his cheeks. Yet this woman was doing all the things she hadn't done. It felt like Tsunade was stealing Shin away from her. When you get to Konoha, think of it as your new home. In time, you'll forget all the unpleasantness. He'd get her back when he was stronger. For now, he'd steer clear of Tsunade and her vice-like grip. His cheeks were still sore. Just wait, Tsunade, Shin thought darkly. Hours later, the ship finally reached the shore. Kushina, pale and nauseous, leaned heavily against Shin. Shin, I don't feel so good. My head is spinning. Shin supported her, surprised that she was seasick. It was probably because this was her first time on a ship. We're here, Kushina. Hang in there. Tisk, tisk, getting seasick. How embarrassing, Tsunade quipped, arms crossed. Kushina's open hostility had irked her. She didn't want to stoop to the level of a child, but seeing Kushina's pathetic state, she couldn't resist a jab. I am not seasick. Kushina weakly shook her head, trying to maintain a defiant front despite her nausea. Tsunade merely clicked her tongue. Continuing this squabble with a child was beneath her. Let's rest for a bit before we continue. Seeing that not only Kushina, but also Akiko and Kai, were suffering from seasickness, Tsunade called for a break. Shin was fine, he didn't get seasick. And Uzumaki Hikaru, being a Jonin, was also unaffected. They rested, ate some rations, and then resumed their journey. How long will it take to reach Konoha from here? Shin asked Tsunade. Anime and manga. Come closer, and I'll tell you, Tsunade said with a sly grin, beckoning him with a finger. Nah, I don't need to know that badly. Shin and Kushina trailed behind, taking in the scenery of the Land of Fire. They had set foot on Land of Fire soil as soon as they disembarked. While not the largest of the 5 great nations, it definitely had the most fertile land. The trees here were lusher than those in the Land of Whirlpools, and the people seemed more prosperous. Shin-chan, how are we going to live in Konoha? Kushina asked, her voice laced with worry. Same as always. Don't stress, Kushina. And please, stop calling me, Shin-chan. Shin patted her head reassuringly. Kushina felt a wave of warmth. She was apprehensive about this unfamiliar place called Konoha, but with Shin by her side, her fears seemed to melt away. As long as she was with Shin, it didn't matter where they were. Gradually, Kushina's anxiety lessened. The shadow of the Uzumaki clan's destruction seemed a little less dark. What are you two chatting about? Tsunade had fallen back to join them. Wow, you actually have time to talk to us. Shin remarked. We're escorting you, but we're in Land of Fire now. The most we'll encounter are bandits. It's safe here. Tsunade had been vigilant before entering Land of Fire, but now she was completely relaxed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A volley of kunai and shuriken rained down on them, some even strapped with explosive tags. Shin's face paled. He couldn't worry about hiding his strength now. He grabbed Kushina and dodged. The Senju ninjas, though caught off guard, were still highly skilled. Martial arts films. They reacted quickly, shielding the Uzumaki survivors and evading the attack. Tsunade's eyes widened. She had been about to pull Shin and Kushina out of the way, but Shin had reacted first, moving with incredible speed. She estimated his speed to be on par with her own. Looks like that kid Shin isn't simple after all. She quickly dodged the projectiles. Now wasn't the time to ponder this, she had to deal with the attackers. Her eyes turned cold. To be ambushed within Land of Fire borders was unacceptable. And she had just told Shin that it was safe here. This was a slap in the face. Tsunade felt her cheeks burn with shame. These attackers would pay. Shin and Kushina took cover behind a large tree, Shin's arm protectively around Kushina. His eyes darted around, alert for any movement. If only I could awaken the Uzumaki clan's mind's eye of Kagura. The mind's eye of Kagura was a sensory technique unique to the Uzumaki clan, one of the most powerful in the ninja world. When activated, it allowed the user to sense chakra fluctuations within a radius of several dozen kilometers. With a known chakra signature, it could pinpoint the target's location, movement, number of people, and even their speed. Its sensory capabilities were comparable to the Byakugan. Unfortunately, very few Uzumaki could awaken this ability. In the original story, only Karen was known to possess it. Shin didn't know if he could awaken it. If he had the mind's eye of Kagura, he could easily pinpoint the enemy's location and movements, making it easier to defend against them. Unlike now, where he was forced to rely on his senses and constant vigilance to avoid being caught off guard. Shinobi were masters of assassination. Surprise attacks were their specialty. Kushina, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. I'm not afraid, Kushina said, clenching her fists. She hated being the damsel in distress. I have to train harder. She resolved to become stronger so she wouldn't be a burden to Shin. As Shin and Kushina hid, the battle raged. Over 20 ninjas, clad in identical uniforms and without forehead protectors, emerged from the forest. It was impossible to tell which village they were from. They charged towards the Senju ninjas, weapons drawn. Tsunade channeled chakra throughout her body, activating her monstrous strength. A powerful aura enveloped her. This woman's strength is ridiculous. I must not. Wait, what am I even thinking? Shin, what are you muttering about? Kushina nudged him. Nothing. Kushina, don't you think she's a bit violent? Shin eyed the mangled remains of the ninja. He wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of one of those punches. Violent? Nah, she's all right, Kushina said, her eyes practically sparkling with admiration. Shin instinctively took a step back. Did Kushina have violent tendencies? He suddenly remembered that Kushina's temper wasn't exactly angelic. Shin turned his attention back to Tsunade. Her strength was probably at elite Jonin level, but she was displaying power far beyond that. One-punching ninjas like they were toddlers. Who sent these guys? Shin observed the attackers. Initially, he thought they were after the Uzumaki survivors. But now it seemed they were targeting the Senju. He noticed that Uzumaki Hikaru was no longer under the protection of the Senju ninjas. If the attackers were after the Uzumaki, they would have gone for Hikaru. A strange thought crossed Shin's mind. Could these ninjas be from Konoha? It wasn't impossible. They were in Land of Fire, after all. If over 20 foreign ninjas could infiltrate Land of Fire without Konoha, the most powerful hidden village, noticing something was fishy. Martial arts films. Man, maybe going to Konoha isn't such a safe bet after all. Perhaps Konoha had something to do with the destruction of Uzushiogakure. Konoha had only sent Tsunade and 9 other Senju to aid the Uzumaki. It was a good thing the invaders had already left, otherwise, this rescue team would have been slaughtered. Now they were being attacked within Land of Fire, and the attackers seemed to be targeting the Senju. Considering the future of the Senju clan, with only Tsunade remaining, Shin's suspicions grew stronger. But even if he was right, he wouldn't say anything. It was just speculation, he had no proof. And even if he did, what good would it do? Loose lips sink ships. Some things were better left unsaid. He didn't know if these were Hiruzen's men or Danzo's. His gut said Danzo. Tsunade was Hiruzen's disciple. Hiruzen wasn't a saint, but he wasn't evil either. He wouldn't attack his own student. But Danzo, that guy was capable of anything. I'll have to watch out for Danzo in Konoha. But as long as I keep a low profile, he shouldn't notice me. But Tsunade had seen him move with incredible speed while dodging the kunai and shuriken. Hopefully, she wouldn't mention it. Damn it. Tsunade noticed one of the attackers cutting down Senju ninjas with ruthless efficiency. She estimated his strength to be at elite Jonin level, perhaps slightly weaker than her, but far stronger than the others. He had already ED3 Senju Jonin. Tsunade's eyes blazed with fury. She tried to reach him, but she was blocked by Chunin, who fought with suicidal desperation. Get out of my way, you little ants. Tsunade slammed her foot into the ground, creating a spiderweb of cracks. The earth shook, throwing the Chunin off balance. Some of them even stumbled and fell into the fissures, unable to move. Tsunade ignored them and charged towards the elite Jonin. The Jonin retreated, shooting Tsunade a cold look. Retreat, he yelled. The attackers vanished into the forest without hesitation. Tsunade glared at their retreating figures, frustrated. They had managed to capture one alive, but he had committed suicide before they could interrogate him. Shin and Kushina emerged from their hiding spot. Shin looked at Tsunade, her eyes red with rage, and shook his head. This was a tragedy. 3 Senju Jonin were dead. Only 6 remained, and they were all wounded. Jonin were valuable assets to any hidden village, even more so to a clan. The Senju clan was a shadow of its former glory. Besides Tsunade, they only had 9 Jonin, and now 3 were gone. Collect their bodies. Let's go, Tsunade said grimly. They continued towards Konoha, the mood somber. Anime and manga. 2 days later, they finally reached Konoha, the most powerful hidden village in the ninja world. The rest of the journey was uneventful. You all head back and see to their burial. I'll take these children to see the Hokage, Tsunade instructed the remaining Senju. They nodded and headed towards the Senju clan compound. Tsunade led Shin, Kushina, Akiko, Kai, and Hikaru, the 5 Uzumaki survivors, to the Hokage's office. Upon reaching the office, Tsunade punched the door to splinters. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked up, his eyebrow twitching as he saw Tsunade. Ah, Tsunade, you're back. How did it go with the Uzumaki clan? He didn't even bother mentioning the door. This wasn't the first time she'd done this. The Uzumaki clan is gone. These are the survivors, Tsunade said, her voice heavy with grief. What? Gone? How? Hiruzen shot to his feet. I was too late. The clan was already destroyed when I arrived. Tsunade clenched her fists. If only they had received the news sooner, perhaps this tragedy could have been averted. Hiruzen observed the children for a moment, then his face took on a mournful expression. Anime and manga. It grieves me to hear of the tragedy that befell the Uzumaki clan. Rest assured, Konoha and the Uzumaki are steadfast allies. We will find the perpetrators and bring them to justice. For now, make yourselves at home in Konoha. You are safe here, no one will harm you. Hiruzen's words seemed to ease the tension. Hikaru and Kai visibly relaxed. Lord Hokage, please, you must find those who did this. Kai cried. Akiko also wept, tears flowing freely as she remembered her loved ones. We will avenge the Uzumaki clan. They are our allies, and anyone who harms them is an enemy of Konoha, Hiruzen declared solemnly. Hiruzen was a skilled leader. His words calmed even Kushina, who had been on edge. Shin could tell because Kushina's grip on his hand loosened. When they first arrived in Konoha, Kushina had been clinging to him, her small hand tightly gripping his. Coming to this unfamiliar place, it was impossible for a 5-year-old not to be nervous. Tsunade, how about we have them stay at the Senju compound? Hiruzen turned to Tsunade. That's fine, but there's something you need to explain to me first. Bam! Tsunade slammed her fist on Hiruzen's desk, the solid wood splitting under the force. Sandame, we were attacked by unknown assailants within Land of Fire borders. What's going on? Hiruzen's eyes widened. He stood up. You were attacked. Seeing the fury in Tsunade's eyes, he knew it was true. Had ninjas from another village infiltrated Land of Fire? How many were there? Hiruzen asked, his voice grave. 25. At least 10 Jonin, and one of them was an elite. Hiruzen's expression darkened. That was a significant force. Anime and manga, if they were indeed foreign ninjas, this could be a serious threat. Tsunade, this is my oversight. I failed to detect such a large force within our borders. I will have the Anbu investigate this thoroughly. He knew that Tsunade's anger meant there had been casualties. Let me know when you have more information. Tsunade left the Hokage's office with the children. Just as they stepped out, they saw a man with a grim aura approaching. Tsunade frowned. It was Danzo. He held a high position in Konoha, but Tsunade loathed him. He was a man who operated in the shadows, his methods ruthless and underhanded. Tsunade, welcome back. Are these the Uzumaki survivors? Danzo's eyes flickered as he looked at the children. He still had both his eyes and his arm, he hadn't undergone his future modifications yet. Tsunade scoffed and walked away without a word, the children following behind. As they left, Shin glanced at Danzo. He recognized him instantly, the scar on his chin was a dead giveaway. Danzo scowled. Tsunade had just disrespected him, just like the rest of the Senju clan. Anime and manga. He entered the Hokage's office, noting the shattered door with a frown. He turned to Hiruzen. Danzo, what brings you here? Hiruzen asked, his brow furrowed. I have something to discuss with you. As do I. Hiruzen walked to the window, watching Tsunade lead the Uzumaki survivors away. He waved a hand. The Anbu guards hidden in the shadows vanished. Only Hiruzen and Danzo remained in the office. Danzo, Tsunade said she was attacked on her way back. I want to know if you had anything to do with it. Hiruzen's gaze was sharp and accusatory. HMPH, are you implying that I attacked your student? Danzo snorted, his eyes narrowing. I had nothing to do with it. Danzo stormed out, abandoning whatever he had wanted to discuss. It was you, wasn't it, Danzo? Hiruzen sat down heavily. He knew Danzo better than anyone. Even though Danzo hadn't betrayed himself, Hiruzen could see through his lies. Punish Danzo. He had no concrete evidence. And even if he did, he would protect Danzo. He would have to find a way to appease Tsunade. This is the Senju clan compound. You'll be staying here. Most of the houses are empty, choose whichever you like. Tsunade led the children into the compound. It's so big. Even bigger than the Uzumaki clan grounds, Akiko exclaimed. Shin looked around. It was eerily empty. It seemed the once great Senju clan was a shadow of its former self. Kushina, which one do you want? Shin asked. Shin, and you, little girl, come with me, Tsunade said. Shin looked at her questioningly. Kid, you weren't exactly subtle back there. I saw what you did, Tsunade said with a knowing smirk before turning and walking away. Shin's face stiffened. He hesitated for a moment, then took Kushina's hand and followed Tsunade. Kai watched them leave, jealousy burning in his eyes. Why is Lady Tsunade treating him differently? He muttered resentfully. Akiko didn't think too much about it. Having a place to stay was good enough for her. She chose an empty house and started cleaning. Why are we following her? Kushina grumbled. Shin shrugged. Tsunade had seen a glimpse of his true strength. He just hoped she wouldn't tell anyone. Anime and manga. If she did, life in Konoha would become complicated. They followed Tsunade to a small courtyard. There are a few empty rooms over there. You can stay here, Tsunade said. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. Shin looked around the courtyard. It was much nicer than the other houses they had seen. Does anyone live here? He asked. Shin didn't want to be monitored. It would expose his secrets and complicate things. Lady Tsunade, there's something I need to talk to you about. Oh, go ahead. Tsunade took a sip from her cup, her eyes twinkling with amusement. She wasn't stupid. She had a good idea what Shin wanted to talk about. Lady Tsunade, you're aware that I'm not exactly normal, strength-wise. Shin didn't beat around the bush. There was no point, it was already out in the open. Indeed, the speed you displayed when we were attacked was quite surprising. Tsunade's gaze was intense. She had been genuinely shocked. Shin's speed rivaled her own. It was hard to believe a 5-year-old could move that fast. Well, it's not that unusual. People can exhibit superhuman strength in moments of danger. It was probably just an adrenaline rush. Shin made up a flimsy excuse. Hey, you think I'm an idiot? I'm a medical ninja. Tsunade scoffed. What Shin described was possible. People could unleash incredible power in life or death situations. But such bursts came at a cost, either a shortened lifespan or even death. Shin, however, was perfectly fine. This wasn't just an adrenaline rush. He was trying to fool her, and she wasn't falling for it. Online image galleries. Okay, fine. I'm a bit stronger than I look. But I need you to keep it a secret, Lady Tsunade. Shin knew Tsunade wasn't easily fooled, so he dropped the act. There was no point, it would only make her more suspicious. Why should I? Tsunade was puzzled. Why hide his talent? He was just a child, yet he could move with such speed. Regardless of the method, he was a genius. Lady Tsunade, have you ever heard the saying? A tree that stands taller than the rest will be felled by the wind. A mound that rises above the shore will be eroded by the current. One who walks above others will be criticized by the masses. When someone is too exceptional, they attract not only admiration but also envy. And envy is a dangerous thing, it can twist people beyond recognition. Shin's words startled Tsunade. She stared at him as if he were a monster. I haven't heard that saying before, but I understand the sentiment. You make a good point. I'm starting to doubt you're really a 5-year-old. Tsunade eyed him skeptically. If these words had come from someone much older, she wouldn't have been surprised. But Shin was only 5. Shin coughed awkwardly. He might have overdone it with the profound act. Don't ask me how I know these things. I've always been too exceptional for my own good, always attracting envy and jealousy. Shin tilted his chin up, a smug expression on his face. Tsunade burst out laughing. You're quite the character. It's not an act. It's the truth. I'm so used to an extraordinary life that I want to experience what it's like to be normal. Tsunade and Kushina both stared at him, speechless. One word echoed in their minds. Show off. Shin smirked inwardly. He had successfully diverted her attention from his strength. Fine, I'll keep your secret. But you have to agree to a few conditions, Tsunade said. A few? Are you sure it's not just one? Shin smiled, but inwardly, he was groaning. Yes, a few, not one, Tsunade said triumphantly. Let's see how you weasel your way out of this, kid. As long as they're not unreasonable, I suppose I can agree, Shin said cautiously. Kushina's expression changed. She glared at Tsunade. Don't you dare ask for anything outrageous. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you, Tsunade said, completely ignoring Kushina. Kushina slammed her hand on the table, fuming. This woman was deliberately ignoring her. First, from now on, when I ruffle your hair or pinch your cheeks, you're not allowed to resist or dodge. Shin's face fell. Kushina's expression mirrored his. Old hag, you just want to take advantage of Shin. Kushina jumped onto her chair, glaring at Tsunade. Myth and folklore. What did you just call me? Tsunade was furious. She was only 16, and this little girl was calling her an old hag. You heard me. Cougar. Kushina was fearless when it came to Shin. Little girl, if you weren't so young, I'd teach you some manners. HMPH, old hag, if I were your age, I'd be the one teaching you some manners. Tsunade and Kushina locked eyes, the air crackling with tension. Ahem, shouldn't we focus on the important matters at hand? I agree to your condition, Lady Tsunade, Shin interjected. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Shin had been so resistant to her touch before, why the sudden change of heart? Was he up to something? She wasn't going to underestimate him now. In truth, Shin was playing the long game. He'd let her have her fun for now, but he'd get his revenge later, with interest. He'd make her regret taking advantage of him. Shin, you agreed. Kushina looked at him, betrayed, then turned away, refusing to acknowledge him. Seeing Kushina's anger, Tsunade felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Then she mentally slapped herself. Why was she competing with a 5-year-old? Now, on to my other conditions, Tsunade announced. You might not get another chance. Shin's words held a hidden meaning. He was confident that his strength would soon surpass Tsunade's. With his perfect sage body and the system's cheat, his growth rate was unpredictable, even to him. Speaking of which, I'm curious about your strength. Come with me to the training grounds. Tsunade stood up and led Shin to her private training area behind the courtyard. It was a spacious area. Kushina trailed behind them, her cheeks puffed out like a disgruntled chipmunk. She was still sulking. All right, Shin, let's spar. Wait, what? Shin stared at Tsunade in disbelief. Spar with her? Was she joking? He was no match for her right now. He wasn't into masochism. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you, Tsunade said reassuringly. Go for it, Shin. Beat her. Kushina cheered, pumping her little fist. Kushina, are you crazy? If I could beat her, I would. But I can't. Do you want to see me get pulverized? Shin whispered to Kushina. Pulverized? That bad? On second thought, Kushina recalled Tsunade's brutal display during the ambush and shook her head. One punch could turn a person into a mangled mess. Fighting her was definitely risky. How about we settle this peacefully? I'm not a fan of violence, Shin said to Tsunade, spreading his hands. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. She chuckled. Fine, if you don't want to fight, then you can just take a beating. With that, she threw a punch at Shin. Feeling the force of the blow, Shin's eyes widened. Was she serious? He didn't think she would actually hurt him, but his instincts screamed at him to dodge. Quick reflexes. Tsunade retracted her fist, impressed. Even a Chunin wouldn't have been able to dodge that. Hold on. Shin quickly stopped her as she prepared to attack again. There's no benefit for me in fighting you. So, I'll have to decline. Benefit? What kind of benefit do you want? Tsunade asked. Well, if you teach me an A- rank jutsu, I wouldn't mind sparring with you, Shin said, his eyes gleaming. If she refused, he wouldn't lose anything and would avoid a beating. If she agreed, he'd gain an A- rank jutsu. It was a win-win situation. You're a shrewd one, aren't you? Fine, I agree. I can part with an A- rank jutsu. Tsunade said nonchalantly. As the Senju clan princess, if he had asked for an S-rank jutsu, she might have hesitated. But an A- rank jutsu? She didn't mind. She was more interested in uncovering Shin's secrets. Alright then, please go easy on me, Lady Tsunade. Shin stepped back, putting some distance between them. He focused on Tsunade. This was a chance to test his strength. Of course, There were some things he wouldn't use, like the Rasengan and the adamantine sealing chains. The chains were fine, but using the Rasengan would raise too many questions. It would cause a commotion. After all, the Rasengan was a jutsu that required no hand seals. Anime and manga. The most impressive thing about the Rasengan wasn't its power, although it was powerful. There were other A-rank jutsu that were stronger. But the fact that it didn't require hand seals made it unique. No hand seals meant instant activation. In a life or death battle, even a fraction of a second could make all the difference. Besides, Shin wasn't planning on going all out. He always kept some cards up his sleeve. He knew Tsunade would keep her word about not revealing his strength, but he was still used to hiding his true abilities. You can make the first move, Tsunade said. Then I won't hold back. Shin wasn't going to be polite. He was clearly at a disadvantage. Holding back half his strength, Shin charged towards Tsunade. When he was 3 meters away, he leapt into the air, aiming a punch at her face. You can do it, Shin. Kushina cheered nervously. You little brat. Tsunade scowled. Attacking someone's face was a low blow, especially a woman's. The fist might be small, but the force behind it was undeniable. Tsunade dodged. She wasn't going to take that punch to the face. Don't jump so carelessly, kid. You have no leverage in the air. Let me show you how it's done. After dodging Shin's attack, Tsunade retaliated with lightning speed, aiming for his stomach. Bam! Wood splintered. Her fist connected, not with Shin's body, but with a log. He had used the substitution jutsu. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. She spun around and threw another punch. Their fists collided. Shin was sent flying backward. Just before he crashed to the ground, he twisted in midair, landing gracefully on his feet. Tsunade shook her arm, the ground beneath her cracking slightly. What a strength! Her arm was numb. She hadn't used her monstrous strength, but even her normal punches packed a wallop. What kind of monster was this kid? How could he be so strong at such a young age? Hey, are you alright? Tsunade asked, concerned. After using the substitution jutsu, Shin had appeared behind her, launching a surprise attack. Her counterattack had been a bit hasty, she hadn't controlled her strength. Ouch. That hurts. I think my arm is broken. I can't continue. Shin cried out dramatically, his expression exaggerated. Shin, are you hurt? Kushina rushed over, checking his arm with worry. She glared at Tsunade. Even if he had been injured, with his perfect sage body, he would have recovered in moments. Tsunade's expression shifted from concern to anger. You little liar. She threw a punch. Shin dodged just in time. Busted, Shin mumbled, rubbing his nose sheepishly. Tsunade was the best medical ninja in Konoha, fooling her was a long shot. Ahem, Lady Tsunade, as you can see, I'm not that strong. How about we call it a draw? Tsunade looked at him, then nodded. She felt she had a decent grasp of his abilities. He was strong and fast, likely at elite Chunin level, maybe even higher. He had used the perfect sage body proficiently, but hadn't displayed any other jutsu. It was hard to gauge his combat experience from just a few exchanges, especially since she hadn't gained the upper hand. She watched Shin chatting with Kushina, seemingly unharmed, then flexed her slightly numb arm. Monster, she thought. No wonder he wanted to hide his strength. If it were exposed, it would only cause him trouble. If only she knew he hadn't even used his full power. Lady Tsunade, about that A-rank jutsu. Shin looked at her expectantly. I keep my promises. What's your chakra nature? Tsunade asked. No need to ask, Lady Tsunade. I want to learn the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Shin had already decided. The multi-shadow clone jutsu would be incredibly useful to him. The multi-shadow clone jutsu. Tsunade frowned. You should choose another jutsu. The multi-shadow clone jutsu is dangerous. It's forbidden. The multi-shadow clone jutsu could be fatal if not used carefully. Tsunade was hesitant to teach it to Shin. Lady Tsunade, I understand the risks. I'm an Uzumaki, remember? Shin smiled. The multi-shadow clone jutsu would accelerate his training significantly. He already had the shadow clone jutsu, but creating clones one by one was inefficient. Fine. I don't know why you want to learn this jutsu, but I'll teach you. Just promise me you'll be careful. Seeing his insistence, Tsunade agreed, but she stressed the dangers of the jutsu. Even for an Uzumaki with large chakra reserves, it was a jutsu to be treated with caution. I haven't learned the multi-shadow clone jutsu myself, but I have a scroll with the training method. Here you go. Tsunade pulled out a small scroll and handed it to Shin. You're just going to give me the scroll and let me figure it out myself. Aren't you worried I won't be able to learn it? You have the scroll, it's up to you to learn it. Honestly, I'd prefer it if you didn't, Tsunade said bluntly. Shin shrugged. Not learning the multi-shadow clone jutsu wasn't an option. It wasn't that difficult for him. It only required a single hand seal. For ninjas with limited chakra, it might be challenging, but Shin had chakra to spare. Oh, I almost forgot. Tsunade smacked her forehead. You two need to come meet my grandmother. Shin's heart skipped a beat. Tsunade's grandmother was Uzumaki Mito, the wife of Hashirama Senju and a former princess of the Uzumaki clan. Mito knew all the Uzumaki sealing jutsu and was the previous Nine Tails Jinchuriki. She must be powerful. Shin guessed her strength might even surpass the Sandame's. Of course, this was just speculation. Perhaps she wasn't a combat specialist. Tsunade called the other 3 Uzumaki survivors. They were all going to meet Mito. They followed Tsunade deep into the Senju compound, arriving at a small, elegant courtyard. There, they met Uzumaki Mito. She looked quite old, which made sense, considering she had lived through the Warring States period. But Shin was confused. Didn't Mito have the strength of 100 seal? Why did she look so old? The strength of 100 seal was an S-rank jutsu that allowed the user to store chakra in their forehead, marked by a diamond-shaped seal. When needed, the stored chakra could be released by using the release technique. And it had another benefit that women would for eternal youth. Mito knew the strength of 100 seal. Why didn't she use it to maintain her youth? Perhaps she no longer cared about her appearance. After all, she was nearing the end of her life. Why bother with such superficial things? Grandmother, I'm sorry. The Uzumaki clan, only these few remain. Tsunade hung her head, unable to meet Mito's eyes. Mito sighed. She hadn't expected the Uzumaki clan, with its 1,000-year history, to meet such a tragic end. Her gaze swept over Shin, Kushina, and the others, finally settling on Shin. Shin felt a strange sensation as Mito's eyes locked onto him. It was as if she could see right through him, even more so than the Sandame. Mito gave Shin a kind smile. What's your name, young man? Uzumaki Shin. Shin met her gaze. He could sense no hostility from her. Shin, I can sense an extraordinary power within you. I hope you use it wisely, Mito said, her voice solemn. Extraordinary power. Tsunade looked at Shin, surprised. Shin's heart pounded. Was she referring to his perfect sage body? Had she seen through him? How should I know? Shin shrugged, feigning ignorance. He couldn't reveal his perfect sage body. Besides, even if he did, no one would understand what it meant. Hashirama Senju was remembered for his wood release, not his sage body. But without the perfect sage body, his wood release wouldn't have been so devastatingly powerful. Yamato's wood release, for example, was only slightly stronger than regular jutsu. It was even dubbed pseudo wood release. Speaking of the Senju clan, they must have some wood release jutsu scrolls left behind by Hashirama. Shin was eager to see them. He didn't have the wood release Kekkei Genkai yet, but he was confident that with enough research, he could develop it. Not the watered-down version Yamato had, but the real deal, like Hashirama's. Shin, what are you thinking about? You're about to walk into a wall. Kushina pulled him back, snapping him out of his thoughts. Shin stared at the wall in front of him, embarrassed. If Kushina hadn't stopped him, he would have walked right into it. Seriously, are you blind? Tsunade chuckled. Shin glared at her. He really wanted to punch her right now. But he wasn't strong enough yet. He'd have to bide his time. He'd get her back one day. Tsunade noticed his glare but dismissed it. By the way, I'm planning on enrolling the four of you in the academy. Tsunade looked at Shin, Kushina, Kai, and Akiko. They couldn't stay at the Senju compound forever. They were at the right age to start school, and Tsunade thought the academy would be a good environment for them. Of course, if you don't want to become ninja, you don't have to go. Martial arts films. She wouldn't force them. I'll go. I want to be a ninja and avenge my family. Kai declared, his eyes burning with hatred. I want to go too, Akiko said. The destruction of the Uzumaki clan had taught her a harsh lesson about the importance of strength. She wanted to become a ninja, at least strong enough to protect herself. Alright, since you've both decided, I'll talk to the Sandame tomorrow, Tsunade said. Hey, you haven't asked us yet. Oh, don't you two want to become ninja? Tsunade looked at Shin and Kushina, surprised. Of course we do. But shouldn't you at least pretend to care about our opinion? Shin said. Tsunade clenched her fist, annoyed. Brat, if you don't want a beating, stop messing with me. Shin wisely shut his mouth. Knowing Tsunade, she would make good on her threat. Lady Tsunade, what about me? Hikaru, the only adult among the survivors, spoke up. If you can pass the test, you can become a Konoha shinobi. If not, you'll have to find another way to make a living, Tsunade said. Anime and manga. Hikaru thought for a moment. Please tell Lord Hokage that I want to become a Konoha shinobi. Fine, I'll let him know. But whether you become one or not depends on you. With that, Tsunade left with Shin and Kushina. Akiko, Kai, and Hikaru headed towards their assigned houses. Damn it. Why is Lady Tsunade so nice to that Shin? Kai seethed with jealousy. And earlier, when they met Uzumaki Mito, she had mostly focused on Shin, ignoring him completely. He already had a grudge against Shin. Now, fueled by jealousy, his hatred deepened. Akiko and Hikaru glanced at Kai but didn't say anything. As they walked back with Tsunade, Shin noticed a boy around his age carrying several skewers of grilled meat. The boy's face paled when he saw Tsunade. He turned and tried to sneak away. Nawaki, stop right there. Where do you think you're going? Tsunade marched towards the boy, her expression fierce. Is that Tsunade's brother, Nawaki? Shin thought, observing the boy. Nawaki's fate was a tragic one. He died at the young age of 12. Sis. Nawaki turned reluctantly, hiding the skewers behind his back. I saw that. Don't even try to hide it. Where did you get those? I bought them. Bought them. I thought you were broke. Tsunade questioned. The last time Tsunade had lost a gamble, she had tried to borrow money from Nawaki. But Nawaki knew his sister's gambling habits. If he lent her money, he'd never see it again. So, he had lied, saying he had spent all his money on ninja tools. Tsunade had left empty-handed. Now, he had been caught red-handed with these delicious skewers. Nawaki felt tears welling up. Lying to your own sister. Those are confiscated. In a flash, the skewers were in Tsunade's hands, leaving Nawaki staring at her with puppy dog eyes. Anime and manga. Fine, fine. Here's one. There were 4 skewers in total. She gave one to Nawaki, one to Shin, one to Kushina, and kept one for herself. Smells delicious. Even better than the ones we make ourselves, Kushina said, sniffing the air. Yeah, not bad. And they're huge.